So, morning everyone. Thanks for inviting me to participate. It's great to see everybody. I'm Dermot, and yeah, with Danny, I was on the board of directors of Drusillas Zoo back in the mid-90s. I probably started when I was 9 or 10, maybe in 1992, 1993, and it was in one of the board meetings for the zoo that I don't remember exactly who, but one of us had an idea for having a children's conference, because I mean the environment and environmental activism was a big theme of Drusillas Zoo. So we would talk about how best to convey that message in the zoo, and from that I think we wanted to do a bit more. And I think we'd had that there'd been a United Nations conference in Brazil in 1992. I think we wanted to do something along a similar lines, but involving children. And from that, we convened a group that worked in parallel to the board of directors, the children's board of directors, to get people involved and to organize this conference. And that process probably started a good 2 years before the conference in '95.
Did you all agree, or was there some dissenters amongst the 12? Was it, Danny, was it something that you all agreed upon, that this was the way forward to have an international conference? And how were you going to get all these young people to Eastbourne, Danny?
I don't remember a single dissenter, if I'm honest. This was, we were a group of young people empowered by Michael and Kitty to help come up with ideas on how the zoo would be a better place for kids. So therefore this transition into actually bringing this to the world stage and tackling the environment on a global level was, as Dermot sort of said, it started at the zoo, but it was such an important part of what we were doing at the zoo that actually to take it that next step was just, to us as 10, 11-year-olds, completely logical. That there was no reason why this wouldn't happen, and obviously once we'd come up with the idea, and the idea had been conceived, I think the meeting or 2 meetings before I joined the board. It was then, we then had the adults, the grown-ups, take our ideas and make it work. So it's an incredible achievement to have come from an idea in a boardroom of 12 or 13, 10 and 11-year-olds to actually become this huge international conference right here in Eastbourne.
And so, Danny, I mean, it's adults will be inspired by the energy of young people, and it's so important that young people have that energy and are not feeling apathetic and not feeling depressed or anything like that, that you as young people, Dermot and Danny and your contemporaries, you were really fired up. And that's very important because it inspires adults to get engaged. And I suppose with Kitty and Michael, because I'm going to bring you in, Kitty, and you'll need to unmute yourselves. Kitty and Michael, you need to unmute because I can see from your camera. And I want to bring them in because it's really difficult for adults to get together to agree on something and to make it happen. And to create a conference where 850 young people from 92 countries descend on a town, a seaside town, for 3 days. It was 3 years in the gestation. And at the time, it cost £250,000. And it required a lot of support from different sponsors and the council. And actually, British Airways came in as a major sponsor at the time. But Kitty and Michael, what actually inspired you to spend all that time pulling this together? And you didn't let go of it. You kept on at it until it was realised.
Well, because the kids told us to do it. It was basically that. How could you say no to those kids who were so enthusiastic?
I mean, when did you ever think, really, is this going to be too much like hard work? Because a lot of adults do take on that attitude. They say, well, we do care about the climate, but it's too much like hard work. No,
there was just huge support from Eastbourne, of course, the major one. And then once the United Nations Environment Programme stepped in, then it was all possible because they could disseminate. We didn't have the internet situation that we have now, of course. So they had to disseminate all the information, the application forms for the kids to fill in, to send into the conference. So they were, then when they came in thick and fast, and Michael and I sat one weekend day, just spread them out on the table, and we just said, they are doing the most incredible things, these kids. They were from all over the world, weren't they? They sent in their projects that they were working on. We couldn't believe it. And we thought, everybody's got to know this, that these kids are doing these incredible things.
It was a question of how you get all those children to Eastbourne. Well, luck would have it that we were working with a company that got British Airways aboard. And I mean, they were incredible. They used the logo on the tails of some of their planes, and they flew these children from all over the world. 800 children from 80 countries. That is what made it such a big conference, but the idea was running through it all the time. Children have a view. Children aged 10 now actually are thinking in a more adult way than they were 10 years before. And therefore, it had to succeed.
Yeah, it was a huge joint effort, and with a lot of dedication from all different areas. It's interesting to think now that British Airways would be a sponsor, but it was 25 years ago. Funnily enough, I was been thinking about this and trying to conjure it all up, but climate change wasn't an issue then. I mean, now we wouldn't dream of having an airline sponsor an environmental conference. But in those days, it really was a lot to do with animal welfare, plastic problem. I mean, that's the most depressing thing, is at that time, and you see it in the challenges that the kids put together. Plastic was a real issue, and it's taken all these years to even try and do something about it.
I think what I hope is going to be the message that kind of flows through the day is, what does it take an adult to do all of this? Because adults are the gatekeepers. And it has become easier perhaps now to say, oh, it's too difficult. And what you show us is that before the internet, writing those letters, buying the stamps, sorting out the faxes, making sure all those children from just around East Sussex were able to come to the logistics of bringing the original 12 junior board members to the Drusillas was huge. And yet you were still running your own home, you had your own children, you had a business to run. You still found that energy at that time to make this idea happen. And I think what I hope when we all come together is, what do we need to do to encourage adults to go the extra mile on behalf of the children who are going to inherit the world that we're going to leave them? And I wanted to read something that has come in from Zain. This is Zain from Jordan. I was 10 years old when I attended the conference. I still live in Jordan. I was excited but scared because of traveling on my own for the first time. I remember the event so well, it has never left me. The messages I took away were powerful and still affect me now. I live 5 minutes from my house, and there's a bit of land there next door, and I came up with the idea to plant it with vegetables and fruits. And every weekend, my daughters now plant something in that piece of land I claimed 25 years ago. That is in Jordan. And that, I think, is something that Eastbourne could do in the future. Where are we all going with the conversations that we have today? We have to find a way to say that Eastbourne has an identity, which isn't just a local identity, that we have a contribution to make. And Kitty and Michael, you sowed that seed, and we are now watering it, and it is a plant this side. We want to make it many plants. And I'm going to hand over now to Paulina, because Paulina, as Rafe said earlier in the session, Paulina met us quite by chance. And Paulina moved to Eastbourne, I think about 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago. She's a young mother. And she just so happens to be a really good friend of the Kitty and Michael's daughter. And it took an outsider to come to Eastbourne to tell us what Eastbourne had. We'd forgotten what we got as a town. So Kitty and Michael, the future lies in Paulina, whom you made a huge impression on. Paulina, can I hand you over to you? And if you could unmute to tell us where we are today.
Yes, hello, thank you. I will unmute and I will also share my screen now to show you my PowerPoint.